Okay, we're going to get going. I see we still have a lot of people coming in, so I'm going to just dispense with some of the logistics here. My name is Adam Greco, and I am the ringleader here for the SDEC, the Search Discovery Education Community. Thank you for joining another one of our sessions. Today's session is going to be in our Adobe Analytics topic area, and we are going to be talking about customer journey analytics. Before we get into the content, just a couple housekeeping items. If you have any technical problems or anything that you need help with in terms of Zoom or whatever, please use the chat area in Zoom, and you should be able to see it at the bottom. Just click and you could pop open chat. If you have a question for Trevor, please add that to the Q&A area. That's where we're going to do all of the questions once he's done with his content. So again, technical questions, chat, questions for Trevor, put it in the Q&A area. And if you are new to the SDEC or someone forwarded this to you and you are not a member yet, check out the chat area. As Trevor's talking, I'm going to put a link for you to officially join so that you can get into our Slack group where you can have access to all of the past recordings. This session will be recorded and will be posted in our Slack group later today. So with that, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome Trevor Paulsen, who I've known for a long time and who's one of the smartest people at Adobe, to talk to us about the future of Adobe Analytics and customer journey analytics. So Trevor, they are all yours.
Hey, thanks, Adam. So yeah, I'm Trevor. If you don't know me, I'm a principal product manager for Adobe Analytics, and I own our new product, Customer Journey Analytics, which is what we're going to talk about today. So let's just dive right in. As a product manager, I meet with lots of companies around the world, and almost everyone that I meet with, actually everyone, it's not even almost, it's everyone that I meet with is trying to better understand the entire customer journey across all of their channels. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle. And there's really three primary challenges that I see at every company that often prevents organizations from doing the true customer journey analysis that they want to do. The first is that companies deal with a lot of data, and they have a lot of different parts of their organization that have different bits of data and own different parts of it, and they often struggle to really tie it together in their own data lake. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But the second problem is that oftentimes there's not enough people in the company that have kind of deep data and SQL expertise. So even if they do get all of the data in one place, it's really hard to proficiently analyze and get the insights that they want out of the data that they do have. And then third, even if they find critical insights, it's super hard to actually tie those to meaningful actions. So those three problems are almost universal in the industry that I see today. And Customer Journey Analytics is a tool, a brand new product from Adobe Analytics that really finally allows companies to address all three of those problems. It's an add-on with Adobe Analytics that comes bundled with several additional features that are powered by the Adobe Experience platform, including Experience Query Service, and you can get Data Science Workspace as well. And today we're going to focus mostly on the analysis workspace portion of CJA, kind of how it works and the cool use cases that it unlocks. But by leveraging the full power of the Adobe Experience platform, Customer Journey Analytics is really able to provide a much easier way to bring all of your customer data together in one place. And when you're able to put Analysis Workspace on top of those combined data sets, you don't have to know like SQL, or you don't have to have deep database expertise necessarily. You can do super interactive, deep analysis in the same way that if you're an Adobe Analytics customer, in the same way that you've always done, now with 100% of your data instead of just the digital channels like you used to have. So today, most of the time we're going to spend in examples because I thought that would be more illustrative than just talking about it. So basically, what we're going to go through is how does CJA work? And then we'll have some questions at the end. But when we talk about how CJA works, there's basically 4 steps. First, you need to get data into the Adobe Experience Platform. Once it's there, you'll move into Customer Journey Analytics, where you will create a CJA connection. A connection allows you to combine data sets together. A connection, if you've used Adobe Analytics before, I'll make a bunch of references to traditional Adobe Analytics. It's kind of like a report suite used to be, but now I can actually combine multiple of them together. The third is we're going to show you how to then create a data view. A data view is something that contains all the metadata and information that you want to use to report on the data that you've connected. And then fourth, where we're going to spend the majority of our time, is showing you all the cool stuff you can do in Analysis Workspace once that stuff is connected all together. So let's just start with number 1. And I just want to make a few points about this, because this is way different than normal Adobe Analytics. And so it's pretty exciting. So first of all, like I said, CJA works on top of the Adobe Experience Platform. So you've got to get your data there. And there's a lot of options for getting your data into the Experience Platform. You can send data in directly with most, standard mechanisms like Azure Blob or S3, FTP. We have connectors for BigQuery. We'll have connectors for Google Analytics. We have connectors for Adobe Analytics, of course, as well. So in fact, all of the Adobe solutions have pre-built connections that allow you to bring that raw data into the Experience Platform. In addition to that, you can even tag your pages to send data directly to the platform if you want as well. So you can send it in batch, streaming. There's all sorts of great options to get data in. It's a lot more flexible than Adobe Analytics is today. Another really important aspect of the Experience Platform is its ability to make sense of the various data sets that you bring in. And the way that we make sense of these data sets is done through a standardized data model that we call the Experience Data Model, or XDM for short. XDM is how the platform helps applications that sit on top of it, like CJA, know how to combine all the various data sets you have. Like, for example, which fields contain an order, or which fields contain a customer ID. XDM is also the thing that provides the mechanism so that you can have proper privacy controls on any of the data sets that you bring into the platform. And using XDM, you can use standard fields. We provide all sorts of out-of-the-box standard fields, or you can create your own unlimited number of fields using custom schema mixins. So this is a dramatic departure from traditional Adobe Analytics. We have unlimited dimensions, unlimited metrics, unlimited list bars, product variables. Basically, we've taken all the limits off. And there's no more evars, props, and events. There's just a schema that you create and manage yourself, or use Adobe's. So that's super exciting. But once you've got your data there and you're using XDM, the next step is to create a CJA connection. And so we're going to go into that. A CJA connection allows you to actually combine data sets together. For example, combining data from many report suites that you have in Adobe Analytics into a single data set, or combine your offline data with your online data. Say you have call center data that you want to combine with, your digital data, for example. So connections, we go into CJA here. Connections are comprised of 3 types of data sets: event data sets, profile data sets, and lookup data sets. And an event data set is where you want to start. That's a data set that has a person ID and a timestamp associated with it. Kind of think of it like clickstream data, from a data feed in Adobe Analytics. A benefit of CJA, though, is that you can actually select what you want the person ID to be. It no longer has to be based on a cookie like Adobe Analytics is today. And the person ID that you select here is what CJA will use to key all the data from. So when you use the people metric, when you use segments, when you use attribution or journey analysis, that's what gives you a cross-device, cross-channel view of the data. We're able to use that ID to stitch all of this together, holistically. And as I mentioned earlier, you can combine many different event data sets in a single connection as well. And where data set columns are similar, we form one column that is populated by multiple data sources. So you can see here the colors indicate which data source we're populating that column from. This combining is kind of facilitated by XDM, that experience data model, when you uploaded the data. So in this example, we have online and offline data sources, both populating this orders column. That'll wind up as a single metric in Analysis Workspace instead of two different metrics from two different data sets. Profile data sets are the second type of data set that can be added to a connection. You can think of these like CRM attributes, loyalty status, lifetime value, demographic segment. These are attributes that you upload that are tied to the person ID that you've selected for these data sets. If you've used Adobe Analytics before, this is very similar to customer attributes if you've used that feature. The third and final type of connection data set is called a lookup data set. And you can think of this like metadata that we're joining to the event data. They give you a chance to kind of upload metadata that informs this cross-channel data better. If you've used Adobe Analytics, you can think of this like synced classifications. This allows you to, for example, classify a campaign tracking code to a marketing channel or a product SKU to a human readable name, for example. So those are the three types of data sets that you can bring in. Once you've created a connection and you've brought those data sets in, the final step before you can start doing analysis is to create a data view. A data view defines all of the reporting settings that we will apply to the data at query. So things like time zone, the sessionization settings that you want to apply to your combined data sets, and the variable settings, the metrics and dimensions settings, those all now happen in a data view. And unlike in traditional analytics, where you had to define all these settings up front, you can now define these and they're applied at query. So here I'm going to select a connection. And once I've picked that connection, I can do things like, well, I'll give it a name, but I can also select the time zone that makes the most sense for the team. And I can select sessionization settings here. That lets me create custom session boundaries on the data when I query it. I can add filters to it, similar to how I would do with a virtual report suite in traditional analytics. And then, like I said, unlike most traditional analytics systems, all the settings here are applied at query, and that includes, allocation, persistence, attribution settings as well. So here you can see I'm applying attribution settings to the checkout method, applying last touch with a session expiration, for example. One of the exciting things here is that I can apply this, and these settings are retroactive and non-destructive. So I can apply these at any time. I can come back and change it whenever I want. And it works across all my data sets. In fact, I can even have multiple data views on the same data set with different settings. So really unlocking a lot of the power of what's possible without having to go back and re-implement or reconfigure or have the data only work from now forward. This is actually one of the most exciting and most innovative things that we've developed to support CJA. So yeah, really excited about that. But now that we've actually added and uploaded our data, added a data view, and we've got everything ready to go, now we're ready to do Analysis Workspace. This is the fun part. And I'm going to show you give you a look at what's possible when you have all this together and you can analyze it in Analysis Workspace. So this is Analysis Workspace. If you're not familiar with it, it's designed to be a free-form canvas for your analysis. And you can add any table or visualization based on any metric or dimension from the data that you've added. It's the favorite tool of nearly all of our Adobe Analytics users. But in CJA, you're no longer just limited to the digital data. As you can see in this table on the top left here, Once I've selected my data view, like I would have selected a report suite in traditional Adobe Analytics, I can now look at this first table, and you see that we've moved beyond just digital only sources in this world. In traditional analytics, like Adobe Analytics, that second row, the analytics data, would be the only data that you'd be working with. Now I can look across 6 different data sources at once, and you can see, for example, how many events came from each source, how many sessions they participated in, and the number of people I selected in each source of data as well. And that's because all of these data sets have been stitched together. Analysis Workspace has lots of powerful capabilities that allow you to create your own metrics. We call those calculated metrics, as well as segment your data using filters. And for example, here we've created a distinct count filter to find people that have more than one data source. You can create sequential segments, find people that have moved from online touchpoints to offline. And here you can see I've got a little summary of how this filter looks, with the number of events, sessions, and people that it qualified. And if you're used to segments in Adobe Analytics, it works just the same way. So showing here, you can craft analysis views that take you just beyond just the digital channels for your most important KPIs. So for example, you can see revenue broken down by this data source dimension that I have. This is a more cohesive view of the revenue because it's one metric across multiple data sets. And that was made possible by XDM and the connection that I showed earlier, where those columns get combined. And the cohesiveness of the data is actually what is the most amazing part of it. You can see here, for example, this Venn visualization can help further highlight the customer behavior that spans multiple channels, showing the overlap of online and offline purchasers. This Venn diagram in particular would be super hard to create using SQL and Power BI or Tableau. There's a lot of SQL kung fu you'd have to do behind the scenes to create this. But with CJA, all that data is just stitched together, and it allows that type of analysis very, very easily. And the way that data is stitched together extends to lots of different aspects of CJA. So you can see I got calculated metrics here. They work across that multi-channel data as well. And that can help you derive new findings. Like in this example, I've got % of total revenue across all my data sources. And even attribution IQ models apply across data sources as well. So if you're familiar with attribution IQ, it allows you to compare attribution models side by side, just like Analysis Workspace today. But notice how the story might change when you have a more full picture of touch points. Analytics data in today's world only accounted for 13.5% of all orders, but when I applied First Touch, the story changes a lot across all the channels, right? And this type of view, this holistic view, really gives you more sound budgeting decisions, right? And helps you make better informed decisions about the entire customer journey, not just the digital part of it. Lookup and profile data we imported are also available, just like any other dimension. You can use them in your tables or as dropdowns. Here in this flow diagram, you can see I'm actually moving from one data set to another. And then I can filter it by yet another data set that's not even in this visualization. For customers that had a low satisfaction score, I can see how they move from a call center to seeing a specific ad creative to then visiting an in-store location. I can analyze it by profile attribute, say a demographic segment or any other segment that I can create. One of the most amazing things you can do with CJA is combine report suites if you use Adobe Analytics today. And we're not just talking about seeing multiple report suites in one workspace project. We're talking about merging the data, at the event level across report suites. And you can see how easy that is here by just adding them all into a single connection, and they all get combined easily using XDM. Another really cool aspect of CJA is that there are no limitations on what you can report on. That means you can report on individual cookie IDs, and then I can even copy and paste one of those, head over to Query Service, and do a simple SQL query that allows me to look at the individual events that the cookie ID generated. And that lets me do like super easy debugging. Again, the power here is the platform, because the data is in, the same data is powering this SQL experience as well as customer journey analytics. And you get all of this when you use customer journey analytics. It's much easier to use together. Also, I should mention that the uniques limits are gone. So when you do reporting on cookie ID, there's no more low traffic bucket. There's no more uniques exceeded. We now support unlimited unique values. Another super exciting thing about CJA. But just going into like one or two more advanced examples, here I've got a calculated metric, and I could do super interesting cross-channel analysis. I've created a segment to show sessions that started on the web and ended in the call center. And I can apply that in a calculated metric to see which pages are most frequently driving calls to the call center. And you can see I've got an error page, a sign-in page, app purchase step 2 page, and a scheduling a vaccine page that all seem to be driving the highest percentage of call center calls from the site. That sort of insight is the type of thing that CJA customers are doing today, and finding all new ways to fix problems they didn't even know existed. We have several customers that were able to reclaim millions of dollars of missed opportunity or savings in the call center, because they can now see it holistically where they couldn't before. CJ also allows you to integrate in like product returns, for example, more easily by combining your returns as an event data set and your connection. You can do super interesting analysis like this cohort table, showing how many days after an online purchase have customers initiated a return through the call center or brought it back into the store. In traditional analytics, this type of analysis would be impossible to do. You wouldn't be able to do it. Okay, last example. Because I like data science and I use R a lot, I created a model here, a propensity model, that's classified my users based on their propensity. And when I segment by it, you can see I've got this high value email channel. By bringing in the propensity scores into my analysis, I can now slice and dice by that propensity and see lots of things that I wouldn't have been able to see before just using R by itself. And as a data scientist, this is really a dream come true, because a lot of data scientists do amazing analysis and it never goes anywhere, or it sits in a PowerPoint. Now, having that data fully integrated into the tool that all the users, all of the analysts and the team is using to find insights, you can have that totally integrated in. And it's super exciting for the data science persona to be able to finally interoperate more fully with the traditional users of analytics. So I've shown a lot of cool examples, but I now want to just take a minute, maybe the last 5 minutes or so, to just go through some of the frequently asked questions that I hear about CJA. And then after that, we can open it up for questions overall. So first, let's just talk about the question. One of the most common questions I get is, well, how does CJA compare to other tools? So first, and starting with CJA compared to traditional digital analytics tools like Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics. So when building CJA, we took the best parts, our favorite parts of Adobe Analytics, and overhauled everything, basically. We took our reporting engine and totally overhauled it so that we could start addressing some of these non-web and non-app use cases, which has been our bread and butter in Adobe Analytics for a long time. And in doing this, we've been able to satisfy a lot of long-time Adobe Analytics customer asks. And the first one is more flexible schema. And yes, that means no more limits to the number of custom variables. And two, lifting limits on the unique value limitations, and we don't have sampling, as well. So you get the full data set or data sets when you're using CJA. The third is we allow for easier data manipulation. So including modifying historical data if you want, or combining and stitching multiple separate data sets across devices and channels. That sort of stuff is super, super hard or impossible to do in Adobe Analytics. In CJA, your digital analytics is just one source of data that feeds into your holistic customer journey. And with the AEP data integrations we have, you don't even have to retag anything to bring in your Adobe Analytics data or even your Google Analytics data. You can bring all of that together, combine it with all of the data sets that you have, stitch it, and analyze it in Analysis Workspace, regardless of where it comes from. So that's the big difference between CJA and traditional digital analytics tools. So the second question I get is, how does CJA compare to more traditional BI solutions where I have, a data warehouse and a visualization layer on top of it? So not only does CJA provide, dashboarding capabilities, but it's also a data exploration tool that's accessible to any level of business user. You don't, no longer is cross-channel data analysis limited to data scientists and SQL users. It allows users to dig in on their next question, provides query time segmentation, sessionization, attribution capabilities. We're also working toward making sure CJA is even more connected to other Adobe Experience platform products for activation. Integration with the unified profile. So if I have a segment and I want to activate to that segment, I can now do that as well. Additionally, if you have users that prefer SQL or Python or R, you can now have everyone working on a common set of data, using Adobe Query Service and Adobe Data Science Workspace. Not only can you do your analysis in the tool that you prefer, but it's all interoperable, right? And you can finally tie modeling done by one team to the rest of the tools that an organization uses via one common platform layer, empowering everything underneath. So that's how I would position this against both of these when I get asked these questions. That's how I talk about it. The next question that I get asked most frequently is, what's coming next? So, while today most of the functionality of Analysis Workspace exists in CJA, not all of it is there. Our goal, though, is to get complete feature parity and beyond, actually far beyond what you can do in Adobe Analytics. And much of the UI is shared, in our code base between standard Adobe Analytics and CJA. So a lot of the great features that we release in traditional analytics automatically show up in CJA. From things like anomaly detection, for example, we just recently released in CJA, now works in both places as well. But there's a bunch of key features that we're working toward bringing in CJA. So democratization is a big one, allowing you to do scheduled reports, download PDFs of your CJA projects. We will have mobile dashboards with the mobile app supported pretty soon. And we have actually a brand new powerful Excel report builder, Excel add-on just for CJA. So that's going to be really exciting coming soon too. Sensei Intelligence, the power of anomaly detection, intelligent alerting, contribution analysis, segment IQ, those things are coming. Automation using the reporting API, that is something that is on our roadmap as well. Same super fast API that powers Analysis Workspace, now just using CJA. Deeper administration controls, we just released actually. So you can now give granular user level permissions in CJA, and that's pretty cool. And then finally, data manipulation with cross-channel and cross-device stitching. So oftentimes you'll have a data set where a user becomes known halfway through the session, and you need to go backwards and restate events that were previously unknown into a known state. That is also currently in beta and will be releasing very soon. So that comes bundled with CJA as well. The power of cross-device, cross-channel analytics in CJA is included. So that's all the stuff that's coming. And just to wrap up on the presentation, you can learn all of this and more by visiting our Spark page. You can see that at the top right there, adobe.ly/AACJA. We've got YouTube videos in there showing you all this cool stuff that I showed you. We Jen and I did a summit session, earlier this year. You can go get a link and see that as well. A lot of the content I shared today is taken from that session. And you can get updates. So if you want to see what's latest on the release, or that's great. Feel free to reach out to me personally. I'm on Measure Slack. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. You can reach out to me and say, hey, Trevor, I'm interested in CJA, or I have a question. I'm more than happy to answer. And maybe I'll just turn it back over to Adam, who we can do some Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Trevor. I have been trying to answer some of the questions that you already covered, but we have a lot of questions, so we'll probably do a power round of quick
Okay.
answers to
Okay.
questions. Just want to be mindful of your time. So I'll shout them out. So given that the limitation in server calls, EVARs processing was built into previous pricing models, what will be the expected pricing model once this eventually replaces traditional AA implementations?
Yeah, that's a great question. The way that CJA is priced is you basically buy a bucket size, and you can say, hey, I want to have this many capacity for this many rows. Since CJA is a lot more flexible, it's not like the server call model where you get billed for every server call you send us. Instead, you can move data in and out at will from CJA as you want. So you're paying for basically a fixed capacity, and you're allowed to move data in and out of that capacity. So that's how the new model works.
And I would always recommend that. I assume people can talk to their Adobe Account Manager if they have questions about that.
Sure, yeah.
Next question. Since we dropped multiple data sources, I think they meant basically combining multiple data sources, how does CJA know automatically how to attach like which user to which data?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you create an event data set, for example, when I showed earlier, you have to select that person ID. When you select the person ID, that lets CJA know who this event belongs to. Same with a profile data set, right? You have to select that person ID. When you select the person ID, that controls how we lay out the data, how it gets reported on, how attribution and segmentation works. So that's a really important setting when you pick that person ID. And then all the cool stuff that you know and love just works off of this new person ID. So it's not tied to a cookie like it used to be. It's tied to, it's a bring your own ID. It can be a cookie if you want, but it doesn't have to be. It can be any ID that exists in the data set.
Okay. Next one. When you showed the merging of report suites, I think you covered this, but does CJA merge, does it sum up metrics like events, success events, and visits, and so on?
You can think it's yes, but it's much deeper than that. So you can think of it like I've got some hits from report suite 1 and hits from report suite 2. When you add those to a single connection, we're going to do this and basically act as if you had put them into a single report suite all along. So we merge them at the event level. So when you report on events, yes, you'll get the cumulative events across the two, but you'll also get segmentation, attribution, everything else as if those were one report suite originally all along.
Okay. The next one is the upload function that you talked about. Will that eventually replace the Saint upload process?
So it's very different in CJA than it is in traditional analytics. In CJA, lookup data sets are what we call that. And there's lots of ways. Basically, you just have to get the data into AEP as a data set. So there's a whole bunch of ways you can do that, and all of those are supported for lookup data set purposes. You know, the CJA UI is distinct from traditional analytics. So if you want, when I upload data sets to AEP, that doesn't, replace or change what you're doing in traditional analytics. However, we do have a method whereby you can take stuff you uploaded in traditional analytics and bring it into AEP and CJA more easily. I may not be answering the question exactly, but happy to take that one offline if that didn't make sense.
Okay, next one, and this may be a general it depends question, but what's the effort or time needed to implement CJA?
So if you are a Adobe Analytics customer today, you can have this done in an hour, right? Like there's no implementation requirements at all. You literally go into AEP and click a few steps, and we bring in all the report suite data and the historical data that you already have in Adobe Analytics, and you can then bring that right into CJA. You don't have to retag anything at all. The same is true if using one of our forthcoming Google Analytics connectors. If your company uses Google Analytics, you don't have to retag that either. So it's very, very fast and easy compared to doing a full traditional Adobe Analytics setup.
Okay, next question. Can you do machine learning with CJA? For example, can you cluster your users based on frequency of events?
Yeah, here's where the power of the experience platform comes into play. So that's not something you can do in Analysis Workspace directly. However, with Data Science Workspace, you can use Python, R notebooks, any of those, which have all sorts of clustering algorithms to draw from. You can have your data science team create one of those and actually output your clusters to AEP as a data set. That data set is then easily brought in to CJA as a profile data set with just a few clicks. And you can now report on those data sets as segments, as dimensions. And you can see, all of your users broken down by cluster. So yes, that is totally supported and facilitated using Data Science Workspace. Or if you do it on your own, you can upload that as well.
Okay, so the next question, CJA seems pretty insightful for e-commerce sites. How can it be utilized for B2B sites where there's no login or store purchases tracked separately? And I cannot let this question go. I'm going to let you answer it, but I was so excited when I saw this question because I used to work at salesforce.com, and what I would have given to have CJA back when I worked there. Because as a B2B company, you can take your CRM data, people who fill out a form on your B2B website, and then you find out 3 weeks, 3 months later, they became a customer. You can now push that into CJA and actually see the true conversion all the way through the funnel. We used to do crazy stuff with the transaction ID feature of Adobe Analytics traditional. But I am actually more excited about some of the B2B aspects when I saw what you were presenting, but I will hand it off to you also for that if you want to add anything to that.
Sure. Yeah, we have a bunch of B2B customers that are really excited to use CJA as well. So that is an excellent use case that you brought up, Adam. Another great use case that our B2B customers are doing is because you can use the person ID as whatever ID you want. We have a lot of B2B customers who actually put their account ID in there, and they can actually do account-based flow, fallout. You can do account-based attribution. CJ is just a lot more flexible and dynamic. Allows you to kind of slice data in many different ways, and that flexibility makes it super cool and powerful for B2B situations as well. So
cool. This one I'm not sure if I totally get, but how are you applying a unified ID that ties a person to the ad impression?
yeah, so that one is definitely harder, and that's the moving target today with all of the changes coming with third-party cookies and the logs that you can get from these different systems. In this example, I did that using query service. So I actually mapped each of the different IDs across the different ad impressions to an ECID and to a customer ID. And again, because you can just manipulate data before and after the fact using query service and in spitting out new data sets, a lot of stuff is possible to do, right? You're not limited to just kind of putting the data in and that's it, like it is in Adobe Analytics. You can manipulate the data, change it historically, restitch it, rekey it, create your own person ID, insert it into a connection. And that's how we solve those sorts of use cases with stitching and ad impressions and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of, hopefully that answers the question, but basically, yeah, the power of CJA is in its ability to restate and bring in historical data or modified data that you created yourself.
Cool. Another question we got is there any other information besides what you shared today that you could provide on alerts and anomaly detection? Maybe some stuff that's
Yeah,
coming in the future.
that is on our roadmap. I'll have to check what the date schedule is, so you can feel free to reach out to me individually, and I can get the deeper or get some more specific information for you.
Okay. Next question is, I presume that there would need to be variable parity across the multiple report suites. I assume they're talking about if you're combining report suites, and what's the impact on virtual report suites as well?
So in CJA, report suites are not really a thing anymore, right? We have data sets and we have data views. When you combine multiple report suites in CJA, I think basically we take all of your EVARs in a report suite and put them in a standard location and like an EVAR custom location in report suite. So if all of your EVARs are already lined up so that across multiple report suites, they're already lined up, you can combine those and it just works and you don't have to worry about it. In cases where the EVARs don't line up across multiple report suites, we will be adding a feature soon that is, we call it internally a variable mapper, where when you connect your Adobe report suite to AEP, you can actually, using a drag and drop interface, define where you want those EVARs to go in your destination schema. That way, if you have EVARs that don't line up, you can map them in one report suite and another to the common XDM locations. So there's a lot of probably more information that we can share about that, but feel free to reach out to me offline and I can answer that question more deeply.
Okay, next question. Can you talk about compliance with data PII, GDPR, and other privacy regulations with CJA?
Yeah, sure. So totally GDPR compliant. We use the privacy API. So when, if you have a GDPR deletion request, for example, all you have to do is submit that to the privacy API and say, delete all the data for this user. That data gets deleted from AEP. We scan that data, find any identities that need to be removed, remove them, and that removal automatically flows through into CJA where that data gets removed from CJA as well. So totally privacy compliant. You just have to go in, and when you create your schema, you just have to point at which fields contain PII, if any, and that lets us know which fields we need to scan when you have a deletion request.
Okay, next one. Loving the retroactive nature of allocation and persistence in the data views. Can that help you remove bot traffic? And I would retroactively, and I would probably also add, like, if you have bad data, like an order that someone put in for $1 million that wasn't meant to be. How does that handled in CJA?
Yeah, great question. There's multiple ways you can handle that in CJA. So certainly you can use a retroactive, allocation model if that helps. You can use a segment to do that as well. You can even go into the source data set in AEP and remove those rows entirely if you want. So if you have a machine learning model that identifies individual IDs that need to be removed, you can go into CJA and remove the data as if it had never been there at all. So a lot of flexibility in CJA to get that stuff taken out.
Okay. Last couple questions here. Could you compare and contrast quickly data workbench versus CJA?
Yes, so I would say that CJA is a lot easier to set up than Data Workbench. This is a great question. A lot of the functionality is similar, and in fact, we're actively moving customers from Data Workbench to CJA. A lot of the functionality around the unified customer profile and sort of that sort of stuff in Data Workbench, we're in the process of migrating that to AEP functionality and CJA. That's probably actually a longer question to answer. So feel free to talk to me afterward, and I'll be happy to answer more specific questions you might have.
Okay, well, we are at our time. Thank you so much, Trevor, especially we hit you with a fire hose of questions. We actually have a lot more, but I'll get you the questions just so you can see what people are asking. You could add it to your FAQ out there on the Spark page at some point. But thank you so much for joining. This was super, super helpful, and it was great having you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks everyone for attending, and we'll see you at the next SDEC webinar.